Okay, everybody. Thanks for joining this June version of the InfoSphere Guardium Tech Talk. In this last brief series we've had, we're taking vulnerability assessment out of the shadows and bringing it to the forefront. And so last month we had a talk on kind of an introductory talk. We'll just briefly go over some of that material today, but the focus of today is making the most out of it. So taking the capabilities that are in this product and using it to make it your own. And so we're really pleased today to have three really great speakers. So Ian Schmidt, who is the product manager for InfoSphere Guardium Vulnerability Assessment, will kick things off. Then we're really pleased to have Mike Martin, who's one of our premier business partners for Guardium, BTRG. He's the governance practice leader. And he's going to be demonstrating how they actually took these customizable capabilities in InfoSphere Guardium and used it to create an offering for PeopleSoft. And so that's going to be very interesting, and I hope you can stay to hear all of that. And then Lewis is going to take, Lewis, who's the development manager as well as head of the research team for vulnerability assessment, is going to take you through basically a tutorial of how to use the query-based test facility and walk through that. And he's going to be doing a live demo, but the slides that are included on the community also include step-by-step textual instructions. So you'll have both the recording and the instructions from the slides to help you if you want to try doing some of this yourself. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ian.
Thank you, Kathy, and welcome to everyone. What I'd like to do is touch on, step back a bit and talk about, position the vulnerability assessment product and its capabilities, from kind of industry perspective, then drill down into IBM, what we do in IBM, and then talk more detail about specifically what the product does. But vulnerability assessment is an actual discipline, and a lot of people, that I work with and I talk to are not aware of the fact that vulnerability assessment is something that kind of in the security profession, the software security profession, has a very specific meaning. And Gartner put out a very interesting report on February, which talks about vulnerability assessment in the broader sense. And their definition of vulnerability assessment, I think, actually fits very nicely with what our product does, and it's surprising, in fact, how descriptive it is. And it's basically vulnerability assessment across the board. Really talks about tools that are there to spot configuration weaknesses, and generally, the application of technology in other other network assets like servers and desktops and mobile computing things, in a sense, is in many ways a little further ahead than we are with database. And what we've been noticing, though, is most recently there's a lot more and a lot of interest across the board amongst our user community in vulnerability assessment as a capability specifically for databases. And so that's, really encouraging. It's a great thing. If you look at, in the next slide, if you look at kind of where vulnerability assessment Guardium kind of fits broadly in the industry or within IBM, which is on the next slide, Kathy. You can kind of look at vulnerability assessment in Guardium kind of two ways. Firstly is in the IBM security framework, there's a number of pillars, the people pillar and data pillar, application pillar, and within each of these pillars, there's actually an equivalent kind of vulnerability assessment component. For instance, in the application area, you have AppScan is a vulnerability assessment tool for applications, and then we have the equivalent in infrastructure. And in data, Guardium provides that role for the vulnerability assessment role. Within InfoSphere itself, we have this whole concept of InfoSphere information governance and data governance capabilities, which is made up of three kind of major pieces. One is the whole area of data quality management. So that's things like data cleansing and standardization and that kind of thing. And then lifecycle management, which is more of a, speaks to things like growth management and archiving and that kind of thing. And then within the security and privacy, we have the whole Guardium set, and which really kind of focus on protection, monitoring, and audit. So, I talked to a lot of people since I came on board and started working with this product as the product manager. And one thing that I was mostly interested in is, why are databases vulnerable? If we have so much focus on it, and it's becoming a really hot issue across the board, why is it that we're finding that a lot of databases are kind of exposed to all the known vulnerabilities and aren't kind of prescribing or lining up with best practices? And I guess there are a number of reasons. The things I hear are, for one thing, is that the amount of data and the amount of data is exploding, and we all understand the reasons. The focus on big data, mobile, cloud computing are all causing this kind of geometric explosion of data. And but basically, you're also not only seeing the amount of volume, but the number of actual databases is your ability to create a database 10 years ago was our complex database was much more limited. But with the tools that we have in EDL tools and things like that, we can pull together data from a lot of different places. And a lot of organizations that we're dealing with have literally tens of thousands of database instances. And so, at that same time, the amount of people or the amount of ability or resources to manage that data has not changed. So basically, we're being pushed forward. Another reason that I hear a lot of the time is that quite often the developments and systems that are being put into production are against that very tight go live kind of schedule, and quite often the people in the development side are not as attuned to the needs of the security in securing the database. So quite often, once they've tested it and got it working in test, they don't really want to. They're very hesitant to make a lot of changes to the database before it goes to production. So it gets replicated without a proper lockdown. Another area which we're going to touch on later on is application packages that get deployed with a lot of default settings and with not really an understanding of the security implications, because a lot of these people doing the tailoring of these application packages are consultants. They're very specialized. They understand the domain very well, but they don't necessarily understand the security implications, what they're doing. So overall, a lot of these systems get turned over to DBAs and security teams that really, they don't have a lot of control over the database, how databases are set up. So, our answer, our technology that we have to try to address these issues is to help people with these problems that they're facing is the Guardium Vulnerability Assessment product, which is really, if you look at the set of things that we think of when we talk about the Guardium process, the ability to discover and assess. All vulnerability assessment products really do two things. They allow you to find what data you have out there, or what objects you have out there, what assets you have out there, and their state of them, how sensitive they might be. And secondly, they tend to allow you to look at repositories for which those assets exist. So it allows us to look at databases and assess relative to known problems, be able to understand exactly where you sit relative to those things. And then kind of lastly, another capability is kind of where you are in terms of entitlement, who has access to what data. So those are the elements that really make up of the Guardium kind of set of capabilities that make up the vulnerability assessment product. If you look at the next slide, you'll see there are three basic editions. And the first edition, which is relatively new, it just came out in April, is Guardium Vulnerability Assessment Evaluation Edition. It really isn't a product. It's more of kind of a learning tool, if you will. And it's a download you can get off of DeveloperWorks. And it has it has kind of built into it a number of limitations, but it's really kind of a tool that was a VMware image, so it's about 1.5 terabyte or gigabytes, and it gives you the ability for one person to look up at like 10 data sources for over a 30-day period, and it's really there to kind of give you a flavor of the kind of capabilities the product has, and it has there's a number of things that the full product does that this product doesn't do, but in a sense, if you use it, you get it set up and you use it, you will get a better sense for what the reporting is capable of doing. The real product, or the first kind of like the two other products that are licensable and supported, technically supported products are Guardium Vulnerability Assessment Standard Edition, which consists of a sensitive data discovery, comprehensive testing reporting, a subscription service that refreshes the tests of known vulnerabilities on a quarterly basis. It has capabilities for collaboration, workflow, and something we're going to talk about today is an extensible framework. And then beyond that, we have an advanced edition which adds to the capabilities of the standard the ability to look at files and things that related to the database instances that are outside the database, and be able to monitor whether they're changing or being accessed. And so it's an auditing system for files related to database security. And then lastly, the whole ability to kind of look at who has access to what is in our entitlement reporting system. So that's really kind of the full scope of the capabilities of the product. If I drill down on the next slide a little bit more on what is in the standard edition, which is in my mind is kind of the core capability. You see, when we talk about sensitive data discovery, it basically gives you the ability to identify sensitive data like credit cards or other personally identifiable information that make your databases vulnerable to attack, and so or things that you really don't want people to be able to get at within a data breach. And then it does reporting on the sensitive objects, but it also has the ability to automatically discover database instances, which is surprisingly a common problem. Not only do people not know what's in their databases, and in some cases they're not even sure where their databases are. And so this ability to kind of discover both the existence of data in databases and then be able to crawl through the databases and find sensitive objects is a key piece of it. The real core of the product is really the testing and reporting part. And so it provides you with industry best practices and benchmarks. So data, for all the data types that we support, we provide a number of tests related, that come to us from sources like the CVE and STAG and CIS, which are organizations that monitor various databases. We also, though, and Lewis and his team do a lot of primary research. So not only do we have kind of the benefit of the kind of industry and sources that often even come from databases themselves, but we have the benefit of other research we do ourselves, and this particularly becomes important when you start getting outside of maybe the most mainstream databases. We're able to actually pull together some of the key vulnerability information for things like Teradata and other data sources that are not commonly covered. And we also have a number of predefined tests to uncover those database vulnerabilities, and for each of these tests that may fail, we have recommendations for remediation, and that's very, very key. It's well to say that you failed a particular test, but we as much as we're capable of, we will provide you with very precise instructions about how to actually counter that. Lastly, we have the ability to collaborate, so we have a compliance workflow capability and the ability to export these tests to other tools. And then what we're going to talk about today is the extensible design, allows us to do custom designed and defined tests and actually, tune particular tests and do a report writer. So why might you want to do custom? So if we go to the next slide. So why might we want to build a custom test? Well, you know, not all vulnerabilities are things that are kind of generic to the industry. There are a number of tests or vulnerabilities that might exist at the organizational level based on policies you might have, or industry level, or at the application level. And one of the things we're going to talk about today is how you know, to apply this technology to a particular case, because Guardium itself was designed to be extensible by users and partners, and so they have you know, people who have special domain knowledge, like our next speaker, are able to actually take some of that special domain knowledge and extend our product to actually do that. So our next speaker will be is Mike Martin, and he's from BTRG.